welcome back to Marriage Moments. So we've missed a couple of weeks. We took a much needed vacation. That's a whole nother segment of really taking time to like recharge, to spend time together, especially, Pastor and I are in ministry, in addition to other things that we're working on, to just stop. And we took that time to dream, think about like, all right, what is our next goal? How are we setting ourselves up for success? So all types of good stuff. So we're back with Marriage Moments. And what are we going to talk about today, Pastor?
It's feedback, not criticism.
All right. So how do we come up with saying we want to talk about this?
Well, I think definitely for married couples, you definitely have to have a level of, I think, sensitivity.
Right.
And I'll kind of jump and say to be able to also think the best.
Right.
When you're dealing with your spouse. We've kind of hit this before where one spouse may be stronger than another one. And so when you're strong, you definitely have to be careful that if your spouse is not strong in those areas, that when you're giving information or when you're giving feedback about doing something, that you're doing it, but you're doing it in a loving way. You're not doing it where you're criticizing. You're not doing it where you're bringing them down. But it allows them to be able to receive the information and the help that you're trying to give them, Pastor.
And I'll tell you, honestly, I feel we as women, and I'll say this for me, most women are like, we want feedback. Because one, we like to talk, we like to intake information. And so for Pastor and I, what we found was like, Pastor's like, I don't have to tell you every little thing you need to work on. But for me, it's like, here's what I think, you could do, or so for me, feedback it's another form of communication for women, like providing that feedback, but for men understanding. And I mean, it can happen with women too.
That's true too.
I just see it more with me. No, I'm just saying. But literally, like not automatically like, okay, you're criticizing. It's feedback. So really, again, as Pastor said, the way that you deliver it, in regards to that, but really understanding, like, I'm just sharing like some things that I'm seeing, I'm observing, I'm doing it in love. But again, it's to try to make you better.
And I think that's good. And it's funny, even as you were saying that, I was thinking, for us, we want to be the best version that we can be of who God has called us to be. And so even when you're dealing with the spirit of offense, you have to be careful because it can draw in hurt. It can actually draw in resentment. Truth be told, even when you're dealing with the spirit of offense, sometimes it can be a real thing that's happening where there's been something that communicated. But then also too, sometimes, co-pastor, it can be a place of you're interpreting a certain thing.
Oh my God.
And so in your interpretation, it's kind of like your perception is your reality. And so your spouse can be relaying something to you. And if you're not really clear on it, you can interpret it that they're being demeaning or they're being belittling. And so, as you said, kind of going back to that communicating, you need to be able to let them know, hey, you were saying this. I just want to make sure this is what you were saying. This is what I was actually hearing when you were giving that feedback. And so it's not to be offended that, hey, just leave me alone. Don't tell me how to do this. I know how to do it. But if there's a more excellent way, then we should be open to that.
And I don't know if we shared the story in the segments that we've done many years ago. It was something simple. The cigarette lighter was broken in the car. And we just happened to be sitting, and I'm like, you really need to get that fixed. And it's like, one, we don't smoke, not a priority, but it was just like, hey, it's broken.
That's good.
And I mean, this was many years ago, and he was just like, why are you like all over me about this? And I was like, because when things need, we need to be all over it. And I joke that I created a monster because ever since that moment, and we had a talk that night, it was like late one night, we're sitting in the car, and he was like, I don't go through like everything you need to work on and you need to, and I'm like, but I want that feedback. Like I want to be better. So don't overlook my faults, even if they're small ones, because it's actually going to make me better. And so we had that conversation. He was like, okay, because sometimes it's like, you might get agitated when you're
That's
getting
good.
feedback
Yeah.
when you're not the type to be like, you're not a feedback giver. Like, I'm going to pray, I'm going to let the Lord work on you. But
That's
if you're
good.
not a feedback giver,
Yeah.
when you get feedback, you might be like, you may be easily offended, or you may take it automatically as
Right.
this is criticism. And so from that instance,
Yeah.
we talked about it. He was like, okay.
Yeah.
And now when I tell you, it's like, hey, that don't have to be done right now. No, I'm taking care of business.
Yeah.
And so it provoked something that was already in him, and he was already super disciplined. So it just went to like the 9th degree of it. And I appreciate it. Now I'm like, honey, that can wait. But it was already in him, and it unlocked this greater level of discipline. And I mean, it could be a light bulb. It don't matter what time it blow. He's like, okay, we're going to replace. I'm like, babe, that can wait till the morning. But he received that after getting past the, okay, where this coming from? Or
Right.
why is this such a big deal? To,
Right.
okay, and now it instills something in him that's,
And I think that's so good, and I'm glad that the Lord gave you that example, because I know for men, because even when co-pastor was relaying that information to me, it was great feedback.
Right.
It wasn't anything to tear me down. It wasn't
Right,
anything to attack my character. Because as men, we want to be like, yeah, I'm the man.
That's so good.
I'm taking care of things.
Right.
I'm taking care of business.
Right.
And so sometimes when feedback is given,
So good.
we automatically can go to a place of, you're attacking my character.
Right.
You're letting me know I'm not taking care of business.
Right,
I'm
like
not,
attacking my manhood is
Right.
kind of what happens. And that's so not the case.
And that's so not the case, because after us really discussing and dissecting
Right.
what co-pastor was relaying, it made a better version of me.
Right.
And so I know for men, we have to really be mindful. It's almost like we have to be purposeful
Right.
in saying, I'm not going to be offended.
Right.
I'm not going to this is my help me.
Right.
And God has put it here to help me. And so we have to be able to receive,
Right.
what God is using them to deliver unto us. And again, we want to be the best version that
Right.
God has called us to be.
Right.
I know the word talks about dealing with the spirit of offense, and how it's a glory, it's an honor to overlook
Yes.
an offense. And so again, co-pastor, we want to be able to receive it
Right.
as feedback, not receive it as criticism, not
Right.
take it as a personal attack against
Right.
our manhood.
Right.
But again, being able to say, you know what, God, thank you for this woman of God that you put in my life that's really helping me be all that you've called me to be.
Right. And again, wives, invite your husband, because you are, and I invite Pastor, like, tell me these things.
That's good.
And sometimes, he'll be like, okay, well, here's something you can work on. But he really is like, I'm going to pray about it. God got it. But I invite him to, share with me things that you think I could level up in. Another thing I do, I mimic him. I tell people this all the time. There are disciplines that he has that I desire.
That's
so
good.
I mimic it,
Yeah, that's
and, I think they say things you do become a habit, and the Bible talks about imitating those. And we know we have our spiritual covering that we imitate,
That's good.
those that inherit the promise. And so I imitate him as my pastor. It's like, there are disciplines, and I'm not there. I'm working on it, but it's like, okay,
That's
I see him doing this, so I'm gonna do that. So sometimes I'm self-correcting myself based
good.
on what I see him doing.
That's good. And even though you're giving it from a wife's perspective.
Yes,
that,
even from the man's perspective.
well,
Is there anything?
Well, no, what I was
Yes.
going to say is also to men that we have to be able to translate even with
Yes.
co-pastors saying that, because there are strengths that our wives have that we should be gleaning from those things. Co-pastors are great organizer, things of that nature. And so those are things that I need to be able to receive, to apply in my life. Again, that's going to make a better version of me. And so it's great that you're able to glean from me, but I also understand that I'm able to glean from you as well, co-pastor.
Amen. And that's so good talking about that, like pulling on those strengths, like, you know, challenging in a good way. Like, hey, you should take on doing this,
That's
or you
good.
should do that, because I recognize that in you.
Right.
And so while you're giving the feedback, also that encouragement is so key, because it's like, he should make me feel like I can do anything, and he does, and vice versa.
That's good.
So when you're talking about those things that, hey, we need to work on, it helps. I'm not really easily offended, because just like you give me feedback on how I can be better, you encourage me just as equally to say, you got this, or you just flow in this, and you know, I appreciate how I see you, you know, operate in this area. I love that you called out with the men in regards to what you hear, because that's so key. And I just want to go back to it. I thought it was so good. Like, you can say one thing like, hey, I think you need to be like more on top of it. It's like, oh, now I ain't handling business. Like, you know, as the man. So making sure it doesn't go in and go and come out a different way. And now I'm not even, you know, we talked about this in communication. Now I can't even receive the feedback. I can't even hear it.
That's good.
Because the enemy's trying to come in and not dilute, but disturb or detangle and mix up what was really said, and have you, again, operating in the spirit of offense instead of being able to receive, so that you can become better.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, it's good.
So we're going to go forth. That we're making that declaration.
Yes.
That we're going to understand, that we're going to be understanding that it's receiving feedback and not criticism.
And I'm telling you, that is something you can actually say in the midst, like Pastor and I, we'll say it in the middle of the conversation. This is feedback, not criticism. So even if you feel like I'm starting to say something and faces may not be, this is feedback, not criticism.
That's good. And one thing too, before we close out, when you went to the place of talking about hearing, that it's so good that you actually have to deal with situations, each situation being isolated.
Right.
As you said, not that when a statement is made, that now you take it and you bring it into an entirety of life.
Right.
Of your basically, hey, in this particular instance, I need this done. And then you can interpret it as, again, so I'm not taking care of anything.
Right.
I'm not doing.
We're talking about
We're talking about this isolated incident.
Yes.
And so that is major. That again, you're really hearing, you're really dissecting that we're talking about this situation. We're talking about this circumstance. It's not that since we've gotten married, you haven't done anything, you don't take care of anything, things of that nature. But again, it's this isolated situation or this circumstance that we're dealing with.
And that's good. And once you've said it and you feel like they've received it, give them time.
That's good.
For men and women, give us time to then work on it.
Yeah.
Now, let's not have a everyday feedback session. So you ain't worked on it yet. So I got some more feedback on that. Give me, I mean, just like in your job, they don't come and give you like, hey, I need you to work on it and come back tomorrow and expect you to be there.
Yeah.
So give them time to digest that feedback and to grow.
And
that's so good. And to develop in it without the constant, because women, we don't want to be then what is it? The nagging, dripping, drop. Like they said, a man would rather be on the rooftop than with the nagging woman that's like dripping. That's not what we're saying. We want to have open, honest, fruitful, constructive feedback and not criticism.
Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm. So make sure too that you're commenting. If you're being blessed by these segments, give a shout out to let us know, pastor, co-pastor, this segment, it blessed me and it blessed me in this way. My marriage is being blessed because of it. I'm implementing these things. Yes. So let us know. Make sure that you're subscribing. Make sure you're getting that information out to your family, getting it out to your friends as well. Yeah. So until next time, take care. And God bless.
God bless.